Good evening. Emanuel Samson will never be a free man again. A jury made that decision to sentence him to life without parole for the attack he unleashed on the Burnett Chapel Church of Christ in Antioch in 2017, of course, killing Melanie Crow.
News Channel 5's Jason Lamb joins us from the courthouse now. And Jason, Samson's attorney had tried to give him a possibility of parole, but the jury wasn't buying it.
Yeah, that is right, and it took the jury about 90 minutes to come to that decision to give the sentence of life without parole. And as you remember, Samson was a member of the church that he opened fire in, and we talked with a lot of church members and victims who said the person they knew was not the person in the courtroom.
It was not the Emanuel that helped with Vacation Bible School or ate with us or pushed cars out of the snow or smiled when you said hello. He had a big bright smile. That was not the same person.
The jury had already found Samson guilty of first-degree murder last week, along with 42 other charges, including multiple counts of attempted murder. Samson's attorneys had hoped to convince the jury during this sentencing phase that Samson's mental illnesses, his schizoaffective disorder and mania, caused his actions on that day. But the jury said that explanation wasn't enough to keep them from handing down the harshest sentence they could short of the death penalty. We spoke with prosecutors who told us they were thankful for the bravery of witnesses who came forward to testify against their former church congregant.
It was a lot more difficult than it was for others to be frank about what happened and honest in their feelings. And every time we spoke to them about it, I think you even saw it in their testimony, they relived this situation. So that's one of the reasons why we're so grateful that they were willing to share with us and with y'all what happened.
We also heard from the defense, who said they think there are serious problems with a legal system that puts people with what they say are severe mental diseases in the same court system as those without them.
But I really think that one day in the future, maybe within the next 51 years, we'll discover more of what's really happening with these people. And people that have real mental health disease, one, could get treatment before something bad happens, and two, certainly wouldn't be subjected to the criminal justice system as people without mental disease. So.
And remember, Samson still has to be sentenced on the remaining 42 charges that he was found guilty of last week. A lot to cover here today. For some perspective on it all, let's go to Nick and Nick.
All right, Nick Barris here, along with legal analyst Nick Leonardo. Day 6 of the Antioch church shooting case, and it is done. Pretty much done. We had the verdict, guilty on all counts for Emanuel Samson last week. We came back after the long Memorial Day weekend with the sentencing hearing, Nick, and it took them about an hour and a half to come back with a verdict on that.
Right, and I was not surprised. I mean, they had already found him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of all 43 counts. And of course, the state only had to prove this aggravating factor, and it was only one of them, beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think because they'd already found him guilty on all counts, I thought that that was pretty much a high likelihood that they were going to come back with life without the possibility of parole, because that or life was the only alternatives that they had.
That was it. We got to remind folks, and maybe some people coming late to the game wondering, well, why didn't they sentence him to death after this kind of conviction? The DA early on.
Right. Death penalty was not on the table. The only option the jury had to determine from the guilty verdict they rendered in count 4 was he going to serve life in jail, or is he going to serve life in jail without the possibility of parole? But that's only as to count 4. There will be an upcoming sentencing hearing that Judge Blackburn will sentence him sometime in July on the other remaining 42 counts.
And those counts could be added onto this concurrently or consecutively, which means he could end up looking at 100 years behind bars.
And some of the counts are mandatorily consecutive. So I do believe that by the time Judge Blackburn is finished at that sentencing hearing, that he's looking at well over a 100-year sentence.
Justice is done for what happened at the Burnett Chapel Church of Christ, and that's how it plays out there with the guilty verdicts. Emanuel Samson will be spending the rest of his life behind bars. That concludes our gavel-to-gavel coverage. Nick, thank you again for everything you do.
Great to be here.
And we appreciate everyone else participating in our coverage as well. We'll send it back to you now in the studio.